That was an impressive countdown, Oscar. Thank you so much.
You're
Three,
welcome.
two, one, and we have started our, I think about 18. Yeah, it's number 18 today. The 18th webinar, the 18th episode of Web's webinar Wednesday. Today, Oscar is joining my colleague from Web's, former HubSpot colleague and still expert, of course. And we're going to talk about perfecting your marketing to sales handoff, because sometimes, Oscar, it are islands, right? There's a marketing island, there's a sales island, and there's no bridge in between or no boat in between. Before we start, I have some questions. Not everybody is joining for the first time, but if you are, we have some simple rules. Please make yourself known, put your camera on, name yourself. My name is Thijs van Rosmalen, as you can see on my screen, and I'm your host for today. I'm working at Webs, the elite partner of HubSpot. As you notice, you're all on mute. So if you have any questions, we of course are happy to help you. But you can use the chat for that. So I will monitoring the chat, and I have the permission to interrupt Oscar at certain points to ask all your questions. So we get you covered the full hour with everything you want to know about this topic, about building the bridge between marketing and sales. You also see my colleague Joop on the call. He will be muted all time, but he is very busy for you, and he will get you covered with the recording and the presentation afterwards. So you can make notes, but you can also share everything with your colleagues or take another look maybe tomorrow or whatever, whenever. So by saying that, let's start off today with a topic regarding marketing and sales alignment. So let's start with some questions. Please open your chat pane via Zoom and take a look at this first question. So which of the following describes your role the best? Is that A, you're in a marketing role? Is that B, you're in a sales role? Or D, you are in a director's role joining? So we got a couple A's coming in, Oscar, a couple
A
C's.
good mix.
Yeah, it's a pretty good mix.
A
B's.
lot of A's, some B's, some
Yes.
C's. This is good.
Yes, I like
We have
this.
all sides here, which is great.
Yeah. B's coming in. Ace. All right. So yeah, thanks for that. Second question: are you using HubSpot within your organization or on a personal level at this particular moment? A is a yes. B is a no. C is yes, I will start very soon. And D, I wish I was working with HubSpot at this moment.
Oh, we got a D.
Oh, Matt. Matt has a D. We're here to help you, Matt. Some A's and B's. Bean, welcome.
Also a good mix, I think.
Yeah, this is great. So some people are working with HubSpot, some are not working with HubSpot, and some wish to work with HubSpot. Final question before we start. What are your biggest challenges on marketing and sales alignment, building those bridges between those teams? A, there is no closed loop reporting. So both teams don't know from each other how they perform, and there is no ROI measurement possible then. B, we don't have a structured lead handoff, so you don't know when marketing gives the lead to sales or when sales gives the lead back. It's also possible. Or C, our targets are not contributing to each other. Or D, we don't meet on a regular basis, so there's no alignment in person. We don't have weeklies or maybe dailies between marketing and sales. You can have multiple answers, of course. And I see come A and B. I see a lot A's and B's, Oscar.
A lot of A's and B's.
So there's no closed loop reporting and there is no structured lead handoff. Hopefully those are the people who don't use HubSpot yet, or otherwise we can optimize it, of course. C and B also. There are actually no D's. So that maybe says that, oh, there's one D, I see.
We got a few
Some
D's.
Yeah, a few D's. Okay, so most of the people, they do meet on a regular basis between marketing and sales. So that's cool. All right. It gives us a good idea of who is joining, what are the challenges. Again, it might seem a little strange that you're all on mute, but try to use this as a dialogue. Use the chat as your biggest friend, because I will manage this. Oscar, let's switch screens and let's talk about this amazing topic.
All right.
How can we build that bridge?
Let me go ahead and share my screen. Tice, you can see this, correct?
Yes, I can see you and we can hear you.
All right. Well, hello everyone. I know you guys can't say hi back, but I'm guessing that you are. Let me just start off this presentation by giving you guys a quick introduction on who I am and who you'll be listening to for the next hour. And yes, I will be able to give everyone slides after this. So really quickly about myself, I actually worked as a HubSpot channel consultant in the Boston offices of HubSpot for 4.5 years. And around half a year ago, almost a year now, I moved to the Netherlands and I started working with Webs as a lead HubSpot consultant. So I've been working with HubSpot for over 5 years, and this marketing and sales handoff topic is near and dear to my heart. So before we get going, I wanted to talk to you guys about a little bit of a story that prompted my interest in this subject. So as a channel consultant in HubSpot, my job was to consult with agencies that were using HubSpot on behalf of their clients. And I ran into a really interesting situation. I worked for around 2 to 3 months with an agency to create a really awesome marketing campaign. And when I'm talking awesome, it generated almost 100 qualified leads, people that were ready to call the client and ask for their services. 100. And we thought we were doing a great job. We had these great leads just coming into the HubSpot CRM system. Well, a few months later, the client called us and said, hey, I haven't seen any value from your services. What's going on? And we said, well, we have these 100 qualified leads. What are you talking about? And the client said, well, we've never seen these leads. We've never gotten these leads. And that's when I realized, we did a great job with our marketing side, but we never communicated with the client. In this case, it was the sales side. So all of our hard work went to nothing, and those 100 leads ended up just evaporating. So from that day on, I kind of made a commitment to myself that I would never focus on just marketing alone. It would be a combination of marketing with an intense focus on what the heck sales is going to do with the leads that we're generating. So that being said, let's start the presentation. We have a quick agenda here. I'm going to start off with talking through some of the definitions on topics that we're going to be talking through in the presentation. And then we're going to go in through implementing a solid marketing and sales handoff. At the end, we're going to go through any questions. And my goal with this presentation is that at the end, you'll have a series of steps and to-dos to perfect or improve your existing marketing to sales handoff. Even if it's 1 or 2 things that you can take away from this, that would be good. So let's start with some definitions. What is a marketing to sales handoff? I know it sounds pretty straightforward, but let's talk about that. A marketing to sales handoff is quite simply the process in which your marketing team passes off qualified leads to your sales team, right? That's as basic as it gets. And usually, we divide these leads into different buckets. Leads, which you can see here, are how we qualify or assign to contacts who have shown some interest in your product or your service offering, but they're not qualified beyond that. You can see that there is some examples of what can trigger a lead, things like downloading an ebook or attending a trade show. Now, above leads are marketing qualified leads. This is a contact who has been determined to be ready for one-on-one follow-up from a sales rep. And you can see some examples here. This is someone who has, let's say, requested a demo from your company, or maybe has performed certain activities that gives them a high lead score and then deems them qualified. Maybe they've opened up a few emails, viewed a few pages. Now, I will note that sometimes people use sales qualified lead in turn in exchange for marketing qualified lead. The two are kind of a gray area, but for the purposes of this presentation, a lead is someone with some interest but isn't ready to talk to sales. A marketing qualified lead is someone who has expressed interest at a point where they are ready to talk to a real human being on the sales team. So now that we have some definitions under our belt, let's talk about how to actually implement a really solid marketing and sales handoff. Step one always begins with planning. Before you touch HubSpot, before you make any changes in the system, create a prospecting list, take a step back and do some planning. This is what I've used for the last 5 years to plan out my marketing and sales handoff. It might sound straightforward, but this graph right here, this Excel sheet, which we'll share after this presentation, is a very simple and effective way to get this planning started. And let's break up this Excel sheet into different components. The first component lists out the different life cycle stages that you're going to be assigning to your contacts. For those of you who are relatively new to HubSpot, life cycle stages are simply a way for us to categorize how qualified a contact is. From a lead, which is someone who has expressed some interest, all the way to a customer, which is obviously a contact who is paying and actually purchased your product or services. So the first thing that we want to do is just figure out what life cycle stages we're going to be using. If we're a very simple organization, maybe we can get rid of some of these, like sales qualified lead and opportunity, and then just have lead, MQL, and customer. If we're a more complicated organization, maybe you need all of the life cycle stages to identify where they are in your long sales process. But in addition to just identifying the life cycle stages that you're going to be using, it's also really important for us to give them a specific definition. I can't tell you the amount of times where a marketer has been referring to a MQL as something completely different to what a sales rep refers to an MQL as. So having these shared definitions in this Excel sheet that can be visible to both departments, I think is a very important first step. The next thing that we want to talk about is what actually triggers a contact to become these life cycle stages. Here are some examples. These are from the kind of best practices example that HubSpot uses. You can see here that a lead is someone that gets triggered when they download an ebook or a white paper, while a marketing qualified lead is someone that is triggered when they request for a quote, request for a consultation, or fill out a contact us form. Then you can see that a sales qualified lead is triggered when a sales rep manually takes an action, maybe further qualifies them. And then opportunities and customers are also triggered by a deal being created or a deal being closed won. And this is extremely important as well, because it's very difficult for a sales rep to understand what a marketing qualified lead really means unless he knows what triggers that life cycle stage to be assigned. So hopefully at this point we have our life cycle stages that we're going to be using, the definitions for those life cycle stages, and also what triggers those life cycle stages. But we're not done yet. We also want to give a responsibility for the marketing team or the sales team at every life cycle stage. You never want to be in a position where there's a life cycle stage that doesn't have a direct follow-up action by either the marketing team or the sales team. Because what will happen is that these life cycle stage contacts are just going to disappear and be forgotten. So again, we're following best practice here. You can always change this depending on your own system. But you can see that for leads, the marketing team's responsibility is to continue nurturing those contacts until they submit a request to quote, for example. And at this stage, you'll notice that the sales team has no responsibility. We don't want sales to reach out to these leads. They're not as qualified yet. We're going to wait for them to become MQLs before sales does anything. When they do become an MQL, the marketing team's responsibility is fairly straightforward. Marketing should provide an up-to-date list of all MQLs. And the sales team's responsibility is to follow up with those MQLs via phone or email as soon as possible. And if they are deemed worthy of follow-up action after that initial call, they'll move to an SQL. So you can see here, we have our lifecycle stages that we're using, our definitions, our triggers, and a responsibility from both marketing and sales at every single stage. The last component to this planning sheet is this line that you'll see here. And this is the marketing to sales handoff visualized. After someone moves from an MQL to an SQL, that essentially means that marketing has done their job. They have given sales a lead that they have deemed worthy of follow-up action. And at that point, it shifts from a marketing responsibility to a sales responsibility. The reason I show this to you guys is because there's a lot of organizations that haven't gone through this exercise. It honestly takes a few hours, but the ability for you to have shared definitions, triggers, specified responsibilities throughout your marketing and sales organizations is huge. And you don't want to continue on the next steps that we're going to be talking about without doing this exercise first. Now, if you want to go one step further, you can take that Excel sheet and visualize it in some type of blueprint. I use a software called Lucidchart, but you could use PowerPoint, you can use any type of software that allows you kind of just to map out the process. You can see here I have the triggers and what those triggers turn contacts into, and all the different steps all the way from a lead into a customer. I would consider this more advanced planning, but in basic, all we're doing is we're taking this Excel sheet and we're just mapping it out. So we've gotten through the planning phase. We've created that Excel sheet that maps everything out. And if we want a better visualization, we'll go ahead and create some type of blueprint. Now it's time to actually implement this. Now, I use this concept called the hierarchy of needs. I'm sure that you guys have run into this before, maybe if you've taken some psychology classes back in the day. Essentially, the hierarchy of needs tells us as humans what we need to be happy and thriving. So we'll start with food, shelter, water, safety, belonging, esteem, and then you get to the highest part of the hierarchy, which is self-actualization, right? Am I happy with what I've done in my life? The same thing applies for the marketing and sales handoff. So I call this, I'm sorry, this isn't the most creative name, but the hierarchy of marketing to sales handoff. So we'll start with the fundamentals. And again, if you don't have the fundamentals, there is no reason to keep going up the triangle. If you don't have food and water, it doesn't really matter if you have friends because you'll be dead, right? So we'll start with the bottom. And that first step is marketing handing off qualified leads to the sales team? If marketing isn't handing off leads to the sales team, then what are we doing? There's nothing else that we can do besides this spot. The next level. After marketing has handed off those MQLs, Is sales following up with those MQLs as soon as possible? Hopefully in at least 24 hours or less. Next, do the sales reps have context on the MQLs before they reach out to them? Am I calling someone randomly without knowing why? Or am I calling someone because I know that they viewed my product page and are interested in X solution? Next, is sales providing feedback to marketing on those MQLs? For example, sales can say, hey, marketing, you've given us a lot of MQLs, but they've all been from New Zealand. We can't work with that country, right? And then finally, are opportunities and customers generated from these MQLs actually tracked? And I can guarantee you, if you ask yourself these questions, you can probably find some gaps in these hierarchy structures, and you'll be able to remedy these issues. So
Maybe a
let's
good
start.
moment for a question, if it's possible, Oscar.
Mhm.
Because based on this, SG, one of our participants, is asking, how do salespeople get the MQL list if they use a different CRM system than HubSpot? So it's a little early to talk about tooling maybe, but what if this process is there, but it's two different tools?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And we're going to go through all of these in more detail.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we'll get to that question, but let me just address it right now. There is a lot of different companies that use HubSpot for marketing and another system for their CRM. Let's say Salesforce, Dynamics, maybe an Excel sheet. There are different levels that you can set up. So the most ideal level is an integration, right? If you're using HubSpot for marketing and Salesforce for sales, the easiest way to pass off MQLs is by setting up an actual integration where those MQLs transfer from HubSpot and appear in Salesforce automatically. If integrations are not possible, because I know sometimes softwares don't support them, they're difficult to set up at times, then it might be something as simple as sending over an alert email to your sales rep saying, hey, a new MQL is generated. Here's all the information. Or third, if you want to do it the more old school way, you can simply just download that list from HubSpot in an Excel sheet and give it to your sales reps. So there's a bunch of different ways that you can set this up. The most important thing is that they have it in front of them, whether it's via an integration, via an email, or via an Excel sheet.
Yep, great. Another quick question from Carlo. And it's actually a question before this because we're talking marketing qualified leads here. And he's asking, okay, what if a lead didn't become a marketing qualified lead? So when it doesn't even
Yeah.
reach the status of marketing qualified lead, are we talking nurturing campaigns here? Can you give an idea for
Yeah,
Carlo?
so if we go back to this, you can see that when someone downloads a white paper, the responsibility solely falls on marketing. And marketing's responsibility is to nurture them, which is a fancy word of saying keep sending them emails, keep sending them information in hopes that they take that next step. However, a lot of people say, well, can't my sales reps just email leads directly? Why do we need marketing to keep nurturing them? We already have their email information. The answer is yeah. If you have a big sales team and they don't have much to do, maybe they have a lot of time, yeah, they can reach out to leads individually. But if you think about it, if we only have the email, a sales rep is going to just have to manually email every single one of these leads, which is the exact same thing that marketing is going to do when they nurture them, except marketing can do it in a more automated way that's more effective because they can actually monitor, hey, I sent 100 automated emails, 90 of them were responded to, let's continue sending this email. So yeah, to your
Yeah,
question, what do we do when someone downloads a white paper? You leave that to the marketing team and wait until they actually raise their hand to say, I'm ready to talk to sales.
yeah.
All right. So what I'm going to do now is go through all of these different layers of the triangle and talked about them in a little bit more detail. So let's start with the first one, marketing, handing off MQLs to the sales team. Why is it necessary? Pretty straightforward. If sales never receives the leads, they're essentially lost. You can see that there's a statistic here, which is kind of mind-blowing, but if you work as a HubSpot consultant, you'll see that this actually isn't that surprising. And that's that 71% of qualified leads are never followed up with. That means that 71% of a marketer's hard work goes to waste. So I don't want to dwell on this particular slide because we all know why it's necessary for these leads to pass off. So let's talk about how to implement this. As I talked a little bit about this before, traditionally there are a few methods, or two methods really, to pass off MQLs to your sales team. The first one is by notification emails or notification tasks. By a notification email or task, what I mean is, hey, an MQL is generated, boom, sales rep gets an email that says, please follow up with this person. The good thing about this method is that it's pretty simple. Sales reps are immediately alerted, and the information can be accessed outside of HubSpot. If you're getting an email, you can go into your Gmail inbox instead of having to log into HubSpot every time. The next method is actually creating a prospecting list. And this allows sales reps to be more proactive with their outreach. Instead of getting one email that says, reach out to this MQL, you can see a list of all of your MQLs. And you could decide which one to reach out to first. Maybe you're going to reach out to one that lives in the same city as you, as opposed to someone that lives halfway across the world because they're more qualified. It also helps you not have leads slip through the cracks. If you're getting 10 emails a day about MQLs, sometimes you can forget that the emails have been in your inbox. If you have a prospecting list, it's easy to follow up with who's you've talked to or not. And then finally, it's also easy to keep track of who you've talked to or who you might have not talked to in your prospecting lists. So let me show you what it looks like. So we actually have a system for handing off MQLs within webs. And you can see here on the left, this is a notification email that I created. I'm sure Tice hates me because my face pops up every time he gets an MQL. But essentially, it's an email that shows up in his inbox, and it says, hey, you have a new SQL that's been assigned to you. We use SQL, not MQL. And it has some information about that qualified contact, their name, their job title, email, company name, website, and the recent conversion event, meaning the last form that they've submitted. And it also has this little button that takes you to the contact record within HubSpot. So this is the first step to handing off a qualified lead to sales. An email shows up in the inbox alerting them. The next thing that happens is that the contact shows up in a prospecting list. So Tice can see all of the different MQLs that were generated and when they became a qualified lead in order. And if you can squint your eyes, you can see here that there's a lead status where he can tag whether someone is in progress, meaning he's reaching out to them, someone is brand new, he needs to reach out to them, or even if someone is disqualified, there is also an option for that. And the final thing that we do is we create tasks as well. So we kind of make extra sure that these MQLs aren't going to fall through the cracks because Tice gets an email, that contact appears in a prospecting list, and the task is also generated within his HubSpot account. So to everyone out there that doesn't use HubSpot, this method doesn't use HubSpot for their CRM. This method would 100% work. And instead of a prospecting list, for example, you can download an Excel sheet. So there's different ways about it. You just want to make sure that you've made this process bulky enough that this qualified lead will never be missed by your sales team.
I'm interrupting you for some questions here. So if you use this in regarding different tooling, Tom was asking, but what are the advantages of doing it both within HubSpot? And Susanna was asking, yeah, how do you support sales getting access to the marketing part of HubSpot? So both, should you put it in one system, for example, to start with that first part of the question?
So, I mean, to give access to HubSpot to the sales team, obviously the first thing that you need to do is make them a user in HubSpot. And you can amend their permissions so that they can only see specific elements of HubSpot. So what I would recommend is within your HubSpot tool, you can actually create a specific prospecting list that only the sales reps can access. So for example, we would go here and add a filter that says, show me anyone who is a marketing qualified lead, and save this as all MQLs. Then you can decide which columns you want to appear in your prospecting list. So, I think it's really important for my sales reps to know what life cycle stage they're in, what's the lead status, and what is the recent conversion, meaning the last form that they've filled out. So there, I have my prospecting list.
Okay, so regarding Susanna, your question, you can give your sales colleagues only permission to see just the information they need. But if you want to convince your colleagues to go to the full tool for either marketing and sales, Oscar, what are the biggest advantages of having this all in one tool?
So I would say one of the big advantages is, as a marketer, you can keep track of what sales is doing because it's all in the same system. You no longer have to move from HubSpot to Salesforce, right? And I think the second advantage is that the HubSpot CRM, at least in its basic form, is free. So if you're using an Excel sheet or a notepad, there's no reason that you shouldn't try the HubSpot CRM out because the core functionality of the tool is 100% free. What I'm using right here, which is generating a list of contacts, this comes with the free CRM. And you can go ahead and share this link with your sales reps and say, hey, sales rep, when you wake up in the morning, click on the link, and there you have your list of MQLs. We've already emailed you notifications about all these MQLs, but if you want an actual list, hey, just click on this link. So yes, to kind of summarize the whole point, if you're using a Salesforce, a Dynamics, and you like it, try to see if an integration is possible. If not, you have to manually export and import them, which I know is a pain, but it's necessary. If you're using Excel or some other kind of antiquated method like writing them down on a whiteboard, try out the HubSpot CRM, especially if you're using the marketing side. There's no harm in trying out the free CRM with HubSpot.
Cool, makes sense. And sales, once they get contacts assigned, they have a pretty easy way of getting notifications. That's Kiki's question. HubSpot has a lot of like a Chrome extension, or there are a lot of possibilities that sales can see what their leads are doing on every channel, on their own email send out, so they get a lot of notifications automatically. So it's not the manual management that needs to be done, Kiki. So you can
there's a lot more complexity that you can add to this system.
Yes.
For this presentation, we're just talking about the basics. So it's just, hey, send them an email when an MQL comes in, make sure that there's some type of list that they can see their MQLs in, right? That's all really you need to do to make this marketing and sales handoff solid at the start.
Cool. Okay, let's continue. We're 5 minutes, we have 25 minutes left.
All right. So the next thing is, cool, you're handing off these MQLs. Let's make sure that the sales team is actually following up with them. Again, another statistic. For a lead generated online, waiting just 5 minutes for an outreach reduces the likelihood of a contact converting to a customer by 10 times. That's a crazy statistic. That means that the sooner your sales rep can pick up the phone or send an email to these qualified leads, the more likely they are to actually become a customer. So it's not just, hey, is sales rep following up with these contacts? Is the sales team following up with these contacts as soon as possible? Even if you wait an extra 5 minutes, it can make the difference between a customer or someone that's not. And if you wait 24 hours or more, man, those contacts will probably forget that they even filled out your form. So how are we going to implement this process to make sure that sales reps are following up with them? What I recommend we do is we create some type of internal sales level agreement or service level agreement between marketing and sales. And the agreement can be the following. Sales reps will reach out to MQLs via phone or email if they don't answer at least 24 hours after they've been passed off by marketing. Right? That is an agreement that should be defined as soon as possible. Granted, if someone fills out a form Friday at 6 o'clock, the sales rep shouldn't call them on a Sunday or a Saturday, right? But if a sales rep fills out a form on a Monday and now it's Friday and they haven't reached out to them, that kind of violates this agreement that we've kind of set up. So besides this agreement, there is a way for you to actually keep track of this within HubSpot. So within Webs, we use this property called lead status. And what we've set up is a process in which whenever a new MQL is generated, the lead status will say new. Then whenever one of the web sales reps goes to call this contact, they toggle the lead status to investigation in progress, right? So marketing can easily see if a contact generated, let's say a week ago, has actually been reached out to or not, simply by looking at their lead status. So to kind of summarize this, in order to make sure that sales is following up with these contacts in a timely manner, the first thing that you should do is work with them to set up some type of service level agreement. Hopefully that will be something along the lines of, we're going to reach out to in 24 hours or less. Next, we want to make sure that sales reps can actually tag which contacts they've started the follow-up process so we can identify if any of them have fallen through the cracks. Let's move on to the next level. Do the sales reps have context on the MQLs before reaching out? Now, by this I mean, do sales reps understand like why they're reaching out to this contact? What has this contact done that causes him to be ready for me to reach out to him? I used to have a job when I first left college where I was a BDR, and my job was to call a list of 100 contacts a day, right? 100 phone calls. And I had no idea why I was calling these people. I had no idea what form they filled out or what web page. So my conversations were pretty awful. It was, hey, are you interested in buying our product? No? Buy. Do that 100 times, right? But if you actually take the time to figure out what actions they've taken before I make that call, I can pick up the phone and say, hey, Bob, I realized that you were looking at our services page and you were interested in this product. Do you want to talk a little bit more about it, right? It's a different conversation. So why is it necessary? Sales reps will approach contacts differently based on the previous actions the contact has taken, as well as their property information. For example, if a contact becomes an MQL by filling out a request a demo form, the sales rep will know to reach out to that contact to set up a demo. Another example, if a contact indicates that his preferred language is Dutch, the sales rep will email them in Dutch, not English, right? So this information is crucial in how you reach out to these MQLs. But how do we actually implement this? Now, I showed you some examples in the handoff slide. but let me reiterate some of these again. One thing that we can use HubSpot for is to create these personalization tokens. Now, a personalization token takes information that the contact has entered in a form and places them in the notification email like you see here. So when Tice gets a notification email, it's going to give the contact's job title, email, company name, what website URL they're from, and most importantly, I think, the recent action that they've taken, so their recent conversion. So this is how we convey this context in a notification email. When it comes to conveying context in a prospecting list, all we're doing is just adding a column with the properties that we want. So let me show you again the example prospecting list. Let's say that it's very important for our sales reps to know what city this contact is from. We can easily give them the context needed by adding the property city to our prospecting list. And now you can see that Oscar is from Boston. So Tice will know, hey, you know what? Boston's not part of our geography that we can work with. Let me not call him. The third thing is actually going in to the contact record and amending what is visible there. So a lot of people don't know this, but you can see within the contact record, there are specific properties that are displayed. And these are 100% customizable. So if you really care about the city where this contact is from, you can make sure that all your sales reps can easily find that by adding that property to the contact view. And now we know that this contact is from Boston. So again, this isn't brain science, right? This isn't something that's going to be very difficult to implement, but sometimes people forget that it's important. So we want to make sure that in whatever way we're passing off these MQLs, there is some type of context that tells the sales rep, you know, what the heck this contact did to merit an outreach from sales. If you are using a third-party software like Salesforce, there are also some integrations that allow you to pull this information and automatically add it to the Salesforce system. So I think I have a live example of this. Let me see. I forgot my password. Either way, if you go into Salesforce, there's this thing called the Visual Force component that pulls in all information like emails, form submissions into the Salesforce system. So again, it's a way for you to share context even if you're not using HubSpot for your CRM. Now we're getting to the top of the triangle. So at this point, we want to get a little bit more specific with this. We passed off the MQLs. The MQLs are being followed up with, and the MQLs have some type of context to them. And now what we want to do is make sure that sales is consistently providing feedback on these MQLs to the marketing team. And I see this issue a lot. Marketing is sending over a ton of qualified leads, but the sales reps are complaining about them, but marketing never hears those complaints, right? So marketing thinks they're doing a great job, but then the sales reps are saying, hey, half of these leads we can't work with because they don't have enough budget. Marketing needs to know that. So here you can see that say sales reps are on the front line, making their input extremely valuable, right? If marketing does not take feedback from the sales team, they'll never know if the MQLs provided are actually valuable. So we want to make sure that we are setting up some type of process in which sales can provide this feedback to the marketing team. Now, I mentioned two ways here. The first one is quite simply by having a little toggle that sales can use to indicate whether this contact was qualified or unqualified, right? Pretty simple. Hey, sales rep got an MQL. they can either tag them as unqualified or qualified. So marketing can see out of the 100 MQLs that we've passed off, what percent have been unqualified, what percent has moved on to the next stage. The second way is by having a weekly or even just a monthly meeting, right? You meet once a month with the marketing and the sales team. Marketing brings a list of qualified leads that they thought were really valuable. And sales kind of criticizes those leads, pokes holes in them, and you guys figure out what's been working, what hasn't. So however you implement it, you want to make sure that there is some type of feedback, whether it's just with a quick toggle or with a weekly or monthly meeting. I would recommend doing both. Okay, now we're getting to the last part of the triangle, which is, are we actually keeping track of the outcome of these MQLs, whether they became opportunities or customers? Another statistic here, 72% of organizations that calculate their ROI actually label their strategy as effective. So essentially, the fact that you can calculate your ROI will usually lead to your marketing strategy being deemed as effective because you can actually track it. If you end up sending over marketing qualified leads to your sales team and you don't know if they've become an opportunity or if they become a customer, marketing really has no idea whether their work is actually providing benefit or not. So we really want to make sure that there is some type of process so that sales can give feedback to marketing to tell them, hey, this contact became a customer at the end of the day. Now, for those that are using the HubSpot CRM, the first way that we can track whether a contact has moved to the next level is by keeping track of whether the contact has become an opportunity. So here you can see we have Oscar. Oscar is a marketing qualified lead, meaning in our definition, sales is calling him. If Oscar is ready to begin the sales process, what we usually want to do is we want to associate a deal with Oscar. So now I've associated a deal with Oscar. Now, because I've associated a deal with the Oscar contact record, you can see that the lifecycle stage has moved from MQL to opportunity. And this is an automated process that's default in HubSpot, and a lot of people don't know about it. But essentially, anytime a contact is associated with a deal, their lifecycle stage will become an opportunity. So that is an easy way for us to keep track of which MQL moved on to the next step. Quite simply, we just look at how many MQLs have become opportunities. Now, we also want to make sure that we keep track of how many of those opportunities became customers. So let's go back into HubSpot. Now we see that we have our deal that we just created here. And if we move this deal to a closed won stage, you'll notice that this lifecycle stage moves from opportunity to customer. It'll do it in a little bit. But essentially what we're doing here is we are tagging any contact that has an associated deal that is in a closed won stage as customer. So I know a lot of people don't use HubSpot as their CRM here, but if you are using HubSpot as a CRM, you can use these automated processes to keep track of which contact became an opportunity and which contact became a customer. If you're using a third-party CRM, that might have to be something that is manually done by the sales reps. They have to manually tag a contact as, hey, they're an opportunity now, and then manually tag them as they're a customer. But if you don't tag them, then you won't be able to see which one of your MQLs actually had some success. So let me break down the hierarchy again. Step number 1, make sure that marketing is handing off MQLs to the sales team before you do anything else. Step number 2, make sure that your sales team is following up with MQLs as soon as possible, ideally in 24 hours or less. Next stage, make sure that the sales team actually gets some context on who these MQLs actually are and what they've done to merit becoming an MQL. Next, make sure that sales is providing constant feedback to marketing based on the MQLs that they received. And then the final one is, hey, make sure that opportunities and customers are tracked. So make sure that your MQLs that move to an opportunity or a customer stage actually get tracked. And if you've done that, if you got all those stages done, you'll be able to create some really solid reporting. Now I'm going to go through these really quickly, but you can see some of these reports when you look at this PowerPoint later. These are some of my favorite. This report quite simply shows us the percent of MQLs that have turned into SQLs, then opportunities, then customers. So in our definition, it would be how many qualified contacts were passed off to sales, how many of those contacts did sales accept, how many of those contacts became an opportunity, how many became a customer. This report shows us the number of MQLs generated month over month. This report shows us the number of MQLs that were accepted, or AKA became SQLs. And then this report, this just shows us all of the MQLs that were rejected by sales.
And Oscar, quick question from Kiki. What if a lead got in contact with the sales colleague at an event, for example?
Mhm.
They never got the status MQL in your system. So how do you measure ROI of marketing then?
Well, it depends. If the event was hosted by marketing and they want to have some type of attribution, what we would do is we would have the sales rep manually add a property, for example, called original source and tag it with from event, right? That would have to be something that's done manually, but you can easily create a property with a list of all of the events that you've hosted. And whenever a sales rep creates a contact based on the event, they can just add the event to the property. But if the sales rep, for example, runs into someone on the street and he's interested in the product, then the sales rep should add that contact into HubSpot. And I would recommend to add them as a sales qualified lead, someone that's already been qualified by the sales rep.
Yeah,
And the
makes
reason
sense.
I would recommend that is marketing didn't really generate them. So there's no reason for us to have it be an MQL than an SQL. Yeah, so we only have a few minutes left. I know we didn't cover the reports in too much detail, but I think the point that I was trying to make with this reporting slide is, as long as you have these hierarchy items fulfilled, you will be able to create these reports very easily within HubSpot. So kind of takeaway before we get into questions is, take a look at your marketing and sales process. The first step that you want to do is just do some planning. Once you kind of have it all planned out, audit that plan by running through this hierarchy pyramid and find gaps on all of these stages and correct them. If you've corrected all of these stages, then I will guarantee you your marketing and sales handoff will be better than 85% of the companies out there. And I use 85% as a number that I've just gotten over the years. So yeah, I hope that there's some takeaways from this. But I guess for the last couple minutes, I'll open it up to any questions that you guys have.
Great, thank you, Oscar. So yeah, let's use the last couple minutes to ask some questions. Burke is asking a question. How do you automate that a contact enters the MQL contact list, can you link this automatically to the completion of a form?
Yeah, so what I do is in this example that we created, I basically created a list that contains every contact whose lifecycle stage is MQL. So anytime there's an MQL, they show up on this list. And in order to trigger an MQL from a form submission, if you're using HubSpot, is finding your form and actually adding the lifecycle stage field to the form. Now, we obviously don't want people to know that we're assigning them to a lifecycle stage. So what you want to do is you want to make this field hidden, and you want to automatically tag them as an MQL every time they fill out this form. So when someone looks at this form, they won't see that lifecycle stage tag, but when they submit it, it'll automatically turn that contact into an MQL, which will then have them appear on your MQL list.
Cool.
All right.
There was another question earlier in the webinar of Otto regarding GDPR, because we were
So,
talking about the generation of leads.
yeah, what is your advice on how to nurture leads giving GDPR consent? I mean, considering the requirement to have GDPR consent first.
Yeah,
So
that's the one.
when someone submits a form via HubSpot, you can actually have them consent to GDPR. So this is one of the stricter GDPR methods that HubSpot uses. And basically what you're having them do is first agree to have the contact agree to store your personal information, and then have the contact agree for follow-up emails. And if they've agreed to both of these, then you should be able to send them follow-up nurturing emails and not violate GDPR. You can make it a little bit easier, right? There's something called legitimate interest, which basically says, hey, if you've submitted a form, we automatically assume that you're okay with us sending you emails. Now, this is something that you have to take internally to see how strict you want to be with GDPR. But just know that there is a way for you to get GDPR permission from a contact just by a form submission, so that you can then nurture them after they've filled out an ebook, for example.
Okay, cool. Two more questions. From SG again.
There's one from Kiki that's really important. If someone becomes an SQL opportunity or customer, but then fills the form again, would they be an MQL? Awesome question. I knew that was going to come up. No. HubSpot will never automatically move a contact's lifecycle stage backwards. If you set up this system with the hidden field and someone is a customer, when they submit this form, they will stay a customer. However, if they're a subscriber, lead, or lifecycle stage unknown, they will become an MQL. And that's why the lifecycle stage property is so unique. You can always move it up, but it will never automatically move down.
Cool. Other question from SG again. If you do it, the integration is not possible, and you send emails to your salesperson people from HubSpot, and they are already using their own CRM. Do they need to use HubSpot then? Because SG, he or she thinks that's difficult for sales to learn another tool, but it isn't necessarily, right?
But if you think about it, let's say that a sales rep gets an email with your MQL. How is that MQL going to be added to the CRM that they're actually using?
Exactly.
They'll have to manually add all the information into that CRM.
Out of that email.
Yeah. And then let's say that that qualified contact becomes a customer in that different CRM. Then you're going to have to manually send information back to HubSpot to tag that MQL as a customer. So there are a lot of issues that arise by not having an integrated CRM with HubSpot. But I understand that there are some situations where that's not possible. If that's the case, then yes, do the email method, manually add the contacts into the CRM, manually tag them as customers and send that information back to HubSpot. But if you can integrate it with your CRM, or you can just push your sales reps into the HubSpot system, I think that that would be definitely preferable. It'll be upfront work, but it'll be better down the road.
Okay, cool. Time's up. It's 11 o'clock. Thank you so much, Oscar. There are still some questions in the chat. So we always come up with answering them. So I want to finish with two more things. The upcoming 2 weeks, there won't be any Webinar Wednesday episode because of this. The biggest marketing and sales convention is happening. It's called Inbound. It's normally in Boston, but due to coronavirus, it is all live online. So this gives everybody a great opportunity to follow this. So please go to inbound.com and pick some great webinars to follow there. And if your questions are not unanswered, are unanswered, you already received an email message in your inbox with this important meeting link. In this link, you can book time with Webs, in this case with D, in order to get your answers your questions answered, of course, and make sure that you will have all the answers there. We're 2 minutes over time, something I don't like, but Oscar, you have a great contribution today. You shared a lot of great things. I'm sorry that we could answer all the questions, but there's this meeting link, and happy to see you all back within 3 weeks from now. And in the meantime, go enjoy Inbound. Thank you, Oscar, again. Thank everybody for joining, and we talk to each other soon. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.